So let's get started. How's your assignment?
Hi, Dwayne.
Can you share my screen? Please check your lab marking by the end of this week because we will update all the marking by the end of this week. So if you find any problem with that, just contact me as soon as possible so we can update or fix the problem for you. Sorry. Today we are going to look about the tutorial, but before the tutorial content, probably we should have a quickly look of the final exam and the content we may be tested on the final exam, which is from week 5 to week 10. Of course, the content from week 1 to week 5 will be tested, but I think like 70% of the content will from week 5 to week 10. So you should pay more attention for the content. And of course, some assignments because like several students sent me an email said they have some trouble on their assignment. Like it's really hard to do the P2P or design a great structure to handle this kind of problem. So we may talk about the program structure. So I will have a example for that. Hopefully it will help. And of course, how to do the submission and debug is also very important, and we will talk about it later. So I just want to help you to get highest mark. And yeah, I think that's all. Let's have a look of the final exam information at first. The final exam will be like the double pass, which means you need to have at least 16 points, no matter what is the other score you have beside the final exam. And it will be multiple choice, and for the short answer, which is only require 2 or 3 sentences to answer the question. And there's no programming stuff, no Python, no Java, and no lab content, including the DNS commands, something like that. Please let me know if you have any doubt. To prepare the final exam, I think the most important thing is to download your lecture slides and merge them together into one file. You can simply download the slides from the WebCMS and use the website called, or this one, small PDF, to merge all the PDF file into one. So you just merge all the PDF into one file, which will save your time to search. And of course, the computer environment setup. So we will not allow, we will not ask you to do the final exam in the VLab. So you don't need to connect to the VLab, but just make sure your internet is stable. A good idea is to try your mobile hotspot before the exam, because what if you lose your internet connection, then you can use your mobile hotspot to connect to the internet back in case, just for in case. And the last one is we will have a Zoom meeting during the exam. So if you have any doubt or trouble with your exam, just come to the meeting room. And let's have a look how to prepare for our final exam. So the first one is the lecture slides. Just download all the slides because it may, like the server may be congested during the exam time. So you may download all the stuff before the exam. And of course, you may think the weekly quiz and homework might be useful for practice, to do practice, because there are not much theory thing for the final exam. I think most of the content, the question will related to the calculation and test your understanding on the knowledge. So it's more about practice. Therefore, the good idea will be have more practice before the final exam. Like you can review all the quiz in the homework, and of course, you will find lots of quiz in the lecture slides, like this. Let me open the stuff here, the slides. So you can find lots of quiz inside the slides. So to just go through them one by one. And yeah, we have a question, we have an answer in here, which is good. So you don't need to go back to the recording and check what is the answer again. But if you have time, you can like have a review of all the recording we had. Yeah, but if you don't have time and just want to save your time, just go through all the quiz and see if you can answer all the questions. And I think that's all. So I have already put the link in here, so you'll be able to find it easily. And I will share these slides into the GitHub later. And yeah, for the important knowledge points from week 1 to week 10, let's have a look of week 1 to week 5, because I have already have a review of them in tutorial 1, probably in week 6. So we will not going to back and have a check. So just have a quick look of it. Sorry, I missed something here. This one is delay. So the first concept is about the computation of throughput and delay. I think they have already tested this kind of stuff in your midterm exam, right? And this time it will be like a little bit different. Like they can combine the TCP concepts with the throughput calculation and delay. And they can also combine the IP stuff with the throughput and throughput calculation. So they may have like different way to test this kind of concepts. Just make sure you can understand all the concepts. How do you calculate the throughput? They are always like throughput is always equal to the speed, the like the file size divided by the time, right? And the delay, you should be able to tell what is 4 different kind of delay and how to calculate them. And of course, HTTP and DNS. For the HTTP stuff, they may probably ask you what is the status code or something about the header. So just you just understand all the concept about the request and response of HTTP. And yeah, and they may give you a like HTTP request or response, or give you the both stuff and ask you something about the header or some static code or something like that, or the methods. Just go through the HTTP content. Should be easy. And for the DNS, it's always related to the type of DNS. So you just it's also very easy. And email, not sure how they will test the email part. I think it's not very important. Just go through them. And sockets. So there's no programming stuff. So sockets, I think it's not quite important. And the UDP, they may have some multiple choice for UDP, asking about the difference between UDP and TCP. And the RDT for the TCP connection is always be tested. Like they may ask you, what is the difference between different version of RDT, like in a real world scenario. So they will not ask you the answer directly, but they may put it into a practice and ask you something about it. So just make sure you can understand all the difference for different version of RDT. And of course, the TCP is the most important thing from week 1 to week 5. And yeah, just go through it, know the concept of TCP and how do we establish a TCP connection, something like that. And of course, the congestion control, I think it's also a part of TCP. This part must be tested. So just know what is slow start, what is AIMD, and what is that? Some TCP flavor like Tahoe and Reno. We may have a look of the slides for now. So let's dive into the TCP congestion control here. Because I have already explained all the stuff from week 1 to week 5, except the congestion control in tutorial 1. So we start from congestion control here. Go to the week 5 and transport layer part 2. And at the bottom side, then you can find the congestion control stuff. Yeah, and then around here. So the key concept for the congestion control is the first one should be CWND. Congestion window size. Let me find it. CWND. Yeah, congestion window. So just go through the slides and understand what is this stuff. Basically, we use this stuff to control the throughput. And the next concept is about the AIMD and slow start. So slow start, what is the feature of the slow start? And what is the difference between slow start and AIMD? Right? Just try to understand these concepts. And if we given you this kind of graph, if you will be able to recognize, is it Tahoe or Reno? So if you don't know what is Tahoe and Reno, you can come to these slides at the end of it here. They will always ask you something about this. What is the difference between Tahoe and Reno? If they give you this kind of graph, and what kind of flavor is this? Is it a Tahoe or Reno or new Reno? And yeah, so that's how they test the TCP congestion control. And let's have a look from week 6 to week 9. Data plane is about the IP stuff, IPv4 and IPv6. So just open the link, go to the lecture. Start from week 7, data plane. For the 4.1, just go through them. You should be able to know what is the difference between data plane and control plane. And here's some historical stuff will not be tested, so don't just skip it. Okay, so just read through it and make sure you understand the difference between them. And let's just go to the IPv4 and the header. This may be tested, but should be very easy if they test about the IP header stuff. Sometimes they will put this kind of stuff into the calculation. They will ask you, what is the size of the IP header, right? They probably in some calculation related to the IP header. So you may lose your mark if you didn't aware the IP have a header. And yeah, just do more practice about related to this one. And the checksum is very easy, so I will not explain that. Just go through the content in here. And the IPv4, another key concept is about the routing and mask. And yeah, of course, the subnets. So you should be able to aware what is subnets and the mask. And there will always have some calculation related to the mask. Like they will ask you how many IP address for this subnets. And if we want to divide this subnet into like two subnets, what should we do? Something like that. So it's also some calculation, but it's very easy. I think the key slide should around here. Yeah, this one is a very good example. So make sure you understand this, why they calculate like this, then you'll be fine. So all the IPv4 calculation will be something like this. And what's next? Yeah, or something like this. How many IP address for subnets? Just go through all the slides and quiz here. The question will be very similar. And the next stuff should be the IPv6 and NAT. So firstly, just understand what is NAT. This one is basically how a router working with several local machine with only one IP address. So they may test what is the port number and what is the IP address. Let me see if they have any quiz. Yeah, just test something like this table. They may ask you to draw a table, probably not. They may give you a table and have some blank on it. and to test if you can understand what is the IP address translation and port, of course. And that's all for the net. It's also very easy if you can understand how we use it. And the other stuff is IPv6. IPv6, uh, I think it's more about concepts in multiple choice instead of calculation for the IPv6. So yeah, just go through the slides of IPv6. Should be easy for you. And the last one is link layer. It's all about the collision avoidance and detection. You just go through the slides, but I think it's more about concepts. So just skip this one. And of course, the last one is the security. Security, we have lots of content in these slides about how we do the encryption and cryptography. Don't worry too much if you can't understand this kind of calculation like here. If you don't know what is this equation, it could be fine. I think just try to understand all the concepts, how they encrypt the message and how they decrypt message to avoid the hacker attack. So you can see they may have different kind of method to encrypt, like symmetric or asymmetric, and just go through them. And for like something like DES, you may find it's really hard to understand. So that's fine, I think. And something like AES, it's okay that you can't understand how they do the calculation and how they exactly work. Just know the basic idea of this kind of encryption, and you'll be okay. It may always be like short answer question related to the security part. And if you can answer it, you can at least get like part of the point. So I don't worry about this part. Of course, they may have some question like this. So you can have a look of this slide, page 55. We had this kind of question in the final exam, like probably 1 or 2 years ago. So we call it middle attack. Just go through the concepts, and they may have less calculation on that. Just try to explain what happened here, then you will get a mark. And I think that's all. Yeah, so please let me know if I miss anything or if you have any doubts. So if we don't, we will go to the assignment part. And if you have any problem with your assignment, just let me know. Here I will just show an example of a program structure. Let me open it. This one is an example of the program structure. So let's see how it works. But you may have totally different structure than this one. So it's definitely okay. You have different structure. Just make sure it's working. So I just want to have a demonstration of a structure. Sorry. Oh, here are the server.py. The server.py will have like a main thread, which will accept the connection from the client, just like the example file. So we didn't modify a lot for the server side. You don't need to change anything about on the example here, but you can see the only difference is in here. So why should I put a socket and address under the server? Because in the example file, if the server accepts a connection from the client, they will just establish a new subthread or subprocess to handle it, but without store the socket and address from the client, right? But in here, we are going to implement a P2P connection for client. So store this socket and address is very important in server side. So let's see how we establish a P2P connection from client A to client B. So you may say, if I can create two subprocess for the client side, like one is for receiving message. So if we receive any message from the outside, we will just print it. And another one is for the sending. So you handle the user input for this process, or you can put it as a main process. So we'll only have one subprocess for the client side. So the main thread will be handle the user input and of course sending the stuff outside of the client. And another subprocess is for receiving the all incoming message. So in here, you can see if we only use the client to connect it with the server, so it will be very easy. Once we have any message or any inputs from the user, we will just use our main process to send the content to the server side, right? Just like before. And if the server have any response or have any new message, they can send to our receive subthread here. And we will print it immediately without any delay. So that's the reason why we need to have two different process inside the client. So if you put this receiving and sending into one thread, like you didn't have subprocess for your client, you may have some trouble on printing the message in time. Because if you didn't input anything, the screen will not refresh, right? It will stuck in somewhere to asking the user to have the input. So that's the reason why we need to have two process for a client, one for sending and another one for receiving. And how can they perform the P2P connection? Basically, is if you can get the IP address and socket from another client, let's say we want to establish a P2P connection from client A to client B, what should we do? We should figure out what is the IP address or socket and socket for client B. So we can send the message from here, from our main thread, which is the sending thread, to the subthread of receiving stuff. So, like this. Right? So if we can figure out what is the socket and address, then we will be able to connect with the client B. And if we, so vice versa, the client B will be able to get our socket and IP address if we send a message to him. And let's see how can we get the IP address and socket for other clients. So obviously we can get in here. So firstly, if we want to establish a P2P connection, we just go to the server side and told the server we want to connect with client B, and please tell me what is his socket and address, like this, like probably the address or port number. Then we will be able to connect with client B. And then once we get the IP address and port number from the server for the client B, then we can send a message to client B directly, right? And client B will be able to print the message out. And we will not require to establish a new connection or new thread to handle P2P message. So that is my design, but you may have totally different designs, and that should be okay. Just make sure your program is working. And yeah, so next part is the how to debug and how to do the assignment, do the submission. If you have finished your program, firstly, I want you to check at here. At the bottom, you can see a table here. Just go through them one by one to make sure you have every function we need for your client, for your program. Just go them one by one to check. But how can we check? We can go to the bottom in here. We have some sample interaction. Just go through them. Just try to input this kind of stuff and see if you got the same output. So make sure your output is exactly the same as the sample here. So if you have any doubt for the output, just post it on the forum. And we will get back to you like in 1 or 2 hours. And yeah, just go through the example here. Just try every example to make sure you have this exactly same output with this input. And finally, you can go back to here. Just go through the concepts, go through the requirement like this. That's the requirement like this. So, but don't worry too much about the corner case. So we may know you may have some unknown error if we put this kind of string into your program, but don't worry too much. This kind of stuff will not be tested. We will only test if the function is working or not. But if you want to, if you still have any doubts, just post it on the forum. And yeah, the other stuff about the debug is to run in the VLab before you do the submission, because we will test your program under the VLab environment. So if you use any library, you just try to run it via VLab without install any kind of library. If it's working, then you will be fine. Okay, so that's all. Just try every example and don't worry about the corner case, and run in VLab before you make the submission. And the last stuff is the report. I would say the report is very, very important. You may think we don't have any point or have very low points for the report. So why is very important? Because you may have some design in your program that we can't understand, and your report is the key to teach us how to understand your program and how to run it. So just like write a document for your stuff for your program. So in the report, you should be able to teach us how to run your program with some example here. How to run your program. This one is very, very important. So if you have different way to run your program and we don't know, then we may consider your program is not working or something like that. And it's like a time wasting on this kind of stuff. Even finally we fix the problem, that you may lose some marks. So just specify how you run your program and how with some example and description, just like the document. And of course, beside the example and description, you can also put some program structure to describe how you make it work. Just like the drawing I showed you before, you can make a graph like this and tell me how it works. And the data structure, because in the picture like in here, I didn't show how the server is interact with the client. So what will be the message type from the client side to server side? Probably we can send a JSON or purely string to communicate. So it really depends on you. So in the report, you can describe how your server and clients communicate with each other and how they understand with each other. So what is their syntax? So basically it's an application protocol that from your point of view. How can they understand with each other and like run the command? And if you find some bug for your program or some minus trade-off or some limitation for your program, you can also write it in your report and explain why this happened. But yeah, if you write it in your report, probably you will not lose any mark for some small trade-off. And it will really help us to save the time. So if we find a bug or something abnormal in your code, then we may consider probably it's a bug and it's not working. But if you just explain why, explain the reason in your report, that would be better. Yeah, and that's all for the report. So if you haven't done your report, just make sure you include all the stuff into your report. This one is very important. Yeah, I think that's all for the assignment. So if you have any doubts for your assignment, just some general question. So if you have any like coding question, we can discuss after all the content. should process command in the client side, since P2P does not need server. Yeah, let's get back to here. Yeah, you may see the P2P does not require we send the message to the server side, right? But the server must be online, right? We have to the server be online during the P2P connection, because for each client they are required to log in before they establish a P2P connection. So the server must be online and the client must be logged in before they establish a P2P connection. So in here you can see, once I want to establish a P2P connection from client A to client B in here, then we will just go to the server side to fetch the address of client B. And if we get the address of client B, then we will be able to connect with the client B directly with this line, right? So actually the P2P does need server, but once we establish a P2P connection, then we don't need the server anymore. Yeah, and since we don't have many questions for now, but let me know if you have any. Yeah, so in here, actually we should go to the tutorial part. Please let me know if you have any doubts for the tutorial. In here, I'll just go back to the review here to prepare your final exam. Yeah, first one, slides, weekly quiz, and practice at the end. So I have upload some practice into the GitHub in here. You can find some sample questions about security, some application. This is just for the practice, but it doesn't say you have to do it. Just some previous practice. So firstly, you just go through all the quiz under the lecture slides, and of course the weekly quiz. And if you still have time to do more practice, just come to here and do some. Yeah, of course, the tutorial 1 and tutorial 2, because we already have this solution, so I just want to save your time, because it is about the probably we will have 2 days to make the submission for the assignment. So I guess you want to discuss more about the assignment, but in case you want me to explain any question for the tutorial 2, yeah, just let me know. But in here, I will just save more time for our tutorial, for our assignment, sorry. But here are some useful information here, just put it here, then you can use it. And some final exam, sorry, shouldn't have any Chinese here. I get this information from other Chinese students. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's all. So in here, just let me know if you have any doubts for the quiz or tutorial or the assignment. I'm not going to dive into the tutorial because some students may want to discuss about their assignment code or problem. So we will save some time for that. And just a quick look of the future course because we are about to finish the 3331. I do have some recommendation for the future course like this. I think I feel like the concept starting like this course 3331 or 9331. You think this course is very easy and interesting. Probably you can select these three. It's all about the concept. And if you are good at studying like this, you may get a very high mark for this course. And if you like the open-minded and coding stuff, the security course is a very good idea. So these two is, I think the course admin is Richard Buckland, Professor Richard Buckland. And yeah, it's really good to have this kind of course if you like the programming or doing the report and being relaxed. And this one is also a programming course for the IoT stuff. They will give you a robot and ask you to have a program to do with it. So it's really interesting to have this. So personally, I like the practice stuff. So just let me know if you have any doubts. But yeah, so that's all I want to present for today. And if you have any problem with your tutorial or assignment, so we can discuss later. And really thank you for coming for the tutorial. And this one should be the last tutorial, last lab we have. And yeah, that's all the content I have. Thank you so much. And if you still have any problem, just feel free to stay here so we can discuss. And I will stop the sharing and start the recording so you can share your screen and tell me what is the problem.